Welcome to part 2 on the series of AR Basics on a Budget, understanding the numbers behind the gun. This series is to help those interested in purchasing an AR to make an educated decision with an emphasis on those on a budget to get the best bang for the buck. I'm assuming you've watched the first video on the nuts and bolts basics, and now I want to focus on what to look for when buying an AR, going over the specifications in detail. This can get a little bit dry, but I really wish there would have had a video like this when I was making my way up the learning curve when thinking about buying my first AR. It took a lot of work and effort for me to understand this, and I want to share this and all that I've learned with you. Let me state now that there are a lot of opinions out there in this matter, and some even contradict one another, and some are outdated because technologies have changed. It may have been correct what they said then, but no longer correct now. But I'm going to keep it as simple as possible with some generalizations that will suffice for my purpose, even though somebody might disagree and your particular needs and personal preferences might lead you to different conclusions on what's best. But hopefully this will get you started in the right direction, and then you can fine-tune it for yourself as needed. Also, as technology changes and new parts and products are introduced, what is stated here might be more up to date than other videos, and this video eventually will become out of date also, and hopefully I'll be able to update it as needed. My assumptions here are that you're wanting to get the Swiss Army knife of firearms, something that does a lot really well as opposed to a firearm tailored for a specific need. I'm also assuming that you want to get a lot without breaking the bank, and the analogy I'm using is the Toyota version of the AR, not the Mercedes. Not the top of the line, but a much more affordable version that gets the job done really well. And for an example, I'll be using my Radical Firearms AR-15 to go over the specifications line by line of this firearm to help you understand the numbers behind the AR and to get the right gun for you. I'll include a link in the description where you can find the specifications online. Let me first start off with the warranty. You want something that the manufacturer stands behind. Many competitors will offer a full lifetime warranty. Look for this and do research to make sure the company stands behind this. I know companies like Smith & Wesson and Ruger stand behind theirs with lifetime warranties. And this is the Radical Firearms, and they stand behind theirs. And I know this with personal experience. I've had to get 2 little tweaks done to it, and they were very quick. And they even went the extra mile to make sure that I was happy, and all the parts I had up in there were their latest and greatest. So I'm very pleased with what I've got. On the other hand, I don't want to confuse with something on a budget with something cheap. Your life may depend upon this tool at one time, and you're going to want to get the best quality possible. And also, what good is a warranty if you're in a zombie scenario where you can't go to the manufacturer and get it fixed? So you have to keep all those things in mind when choosing which manufacturer to choose. So let's get started. Let's start off with the first spec, AR-15. What does that mean? AR does not stand for assault rifle. It was the first model number used by Armalite, who developed this for the military. They first had the AR-10, which is the platform for larger caliber rounds. The AR-15 was developed for the smaller 5.56 millimeter caliber. And this was the model that ended up being used by the military for general purpose use and later adapted for general population due to how awesome and versatile this platform is. The AR-15 is the most popular rifle in the U.S. and there are millions of them sold, and it isn't looking like it's slowing down in the near future. On the global scene, the AK-47 is the most popular. The AK-47 and the AR-15 are competitors in the same market. A reliable and versatile rifle. Well, technically these are carbines and not rifles, which is simply a rifle with a shorter barrel, but the words are used interchangeably, and you might call this a rifle to distinguish it between pistols and handguns. There is an ongoing debate on which is better, the AK-47 or the AR-15. The answer to this question is the answer to many debates on firearms. It depends on what your priorities are and personal preferences. But as technology continually changes, what once was considered better may not be. For instance, the typical breakdown between the AR-15 and the AK-47 is that the AK-47 is cheaper, more reliable, and more powerful. The AR-15 is more accurate and much easier to add a wide variety of accessories to. But the manufacturers of both these types have improved. Manufacturers of AKs have made it more like an AR, making it easier to add accessories. whereas the manufacturers of the ARs have made them more economical and more reliable. And you can even get the AR that shoots the exact same round as the AK, which in fact is what I have here. But I'll simplify this debate here and state that if you're in the US and want the most for your dollar for a very versatile firearm for multiple scenarios, the AR-15 is what you want. The AR-15 I have here has the best of both worlds. Very reliable, just as powerful, doesn't cost any more and possibly even less than your typical AK-47, and can easily be upgraded in so many ways. If there's something that attracts you to the AK-47, I can understand that, have at it. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. But I'm speaking generalities here. So the first specifications involve the upper being this part right here. And let's kind of review some things that go on here. All right, to get some terminology right, we have to understand this is the upper itself. The part connected to it here coming out would be the barrel. This would be the muzzle attachment, in this case a A2 flash hider. This is the hand guard that you put your hand on and grip. And the barrel has two parts. We call the part where the bullet comes out as the muzzle, on the other end of the barrel as the breech. Okay, so the chamber would be the round comes from the magazine, goes up into the upper and gets seated into the chamber. And this upper needs to be designed and built with the proper specifications to be able to handle the load of the ammo in which it's intended to fire. So in this case it says it's chambered for a 7.62 by 39. That means it's going to be able to properly fit that round inside there. And for the 7.62 by 39, you also have to have a specific bolt carrier group to be able to shoot that round. And this will be the bolt carrier group. It includes the bolt and other parts that we went over before. Okay, so with that said, let's go over the first specification. It says it's a 16-inch H-bar melanite barrel, 4150V chromoly. Okay, so that's a lot of numbers, and this isn't a metallurgy class, so I want to keep it kind of simple here, but come over the basics that you need to understand. First of all, that's 16 inches. That 16 inches is the measurement of the barrel from where it connects to the receiver to the actual threads here, not what's ever connected and screwed onto the end of it here. And the reason that 16 inches is kind of a sweet spot. When you're using this in indoors, which is referred to close quarter combat, you're going to want to have something short. Having the big long rifle lugging around, you can hit doors, you won't be able to maneuver as easily. So you want a short barrel. But in the United States here, anything under 16 inches goes under a new category with a lot more regulations and laws associated with it. So 16 inches is as short as you can get, and it'd still be considered a carbine, a rifle instead of a pistol. So there's a lot more to be said there. We'll keep it simple. So 16 inches is kind of a sweet spot for our versatile Swiss Army knife type of firearm. Then it says it's H-bar. This is talking about the barrel. The rest of these specifications are specifically about the barrel. The barrel's that part that's inside of here. I'll put a picture up so you can see it. But it can be made of different types of alloys and metals. And you'll see things like chrome, carbon, nitrite, phosphate, all these different things. Okay, so the next thing is H-bar. H-bar stands for heavy barrel for the AR. Consider this an upgrade version of what a standard would come from. So you see a specification of H-bar, that's a good thing. The heavy barrel means that it's going to be more resistant to wear as well as warping. That's good news because as the rounds go through the barrel, it heats up, and heating can cause some warping, and that warping can affect your shot. And you want to be able to this thing to shoot pretty accurately, or pretty consistently anyway, from 1 shot to 3 shots to 10 shots and so forth. So this is the H-bar is actually excellent for what we're looking for here. Then we have the melanite barrel 4150V chromoly. This is not a metallurgy course, so I'm going to try to keep it simple. The 4150V chromoly is an alloy that meets or surpasses the military specifications for barrels, and the melanite is a treatment that's put on to actually improve the metal quality to make it harder, slicker, and less vulnerable to corrosion. That's exactly what we're looking for here. And yes, you can get more expensive barrels that are chrome and carbon barrels and things like this that really not worth it for what we're talking about here. And you can even have a debate whether it's worth it or not for others, but that's not the scope of this video. You can also hear things like a phosphate barrel. I think that's going to be a step below the melanite, very similar but a step below. And then you can also have the blue barrels, which is even a step below that. So melanite is a high quality type of nitride put on there that improves the quality, the life, and with just a simple minimal amount of care, it won't corrode on you or rust and have a very good long life. Also, the specifications for this rifle doesn't spell out what the bolt and bolt carrier are made of, but I did talk with Radical Firearms. If I understood it properly, it's also made from the same material as the barrel, which is good news. It's going to be nice and rugged and do what we need it to do. The next specification is a 1 in 10 inch twist rate. What that means is that there's grooves that are made in a spiral in the barrel, and the purpose for this is to stabilize the bullets that are shot out. They found that this spinning projectile is much more stable than one that's not, so you get more accuracy, goes further distances, and it's a huge improvement. But you also want to get the amount of twist, a tight twist or a loose twist, how much of a twist you have in there is going to depend upon the size and the weight of the round that you're shooting. In this case, it's 7.62 by 39, and typical grains for these, grains being the weight for the bullets itself, not the whole thing, just the bullet. This usually shoots from like a 122 grain to a 154 grain. And a 1 in 10 twist is a pretty good sweet spot for that type. If you're getting an AR-15 chambered in the more typical 5.56, then like a 1 in 7, maybe a 1 in 8 might be more ideal for what you're shooting. So a 1 in 10 rate for a 7.62 by 39 or a 1 in 7 for a 5.56 is in the ballpark of what you'll be looking for. Is a 7.62 by 39 chamber. Again, the two parts of the barrel is one part is where the bullet goes out is the muzzle, the other end is the breech, and that breech connects us to the receiver here. And the chamber is a part where as the round goes up into the upper receiver, it gets put into position ready to be fired. And that would be the chamber. And due to the size of the casing and the diameter of the projectile, this needs to be designed for the barrel that will fit this, as well as the chamber that will hold this. And that would be known as a 7.62 by 39 chamber to shoot the 7.62 by 39 ammo. All right, and that is not the typical configuration for the AR-15. It was originally designed, and most people buy it, with the 5.56 millimeter by 45 round known as the 5.56, and also you can use 22.3 Remingtons in there, and that gets a little confusing. So let me just stop a little. There's a lot of videos you can watch to learn more about what all these numbers as far as ammos goes, and it is very confusing because there's a lot of numbers out there and they mean different things in different scenarios. But for our sake, I'll keep it simple here. We talk about the caliber of ammo. The caliber simply refers to the diameter of the actual projectile, the bullet part that leaves. And then, for instance, this is a 7.62 by 39. In this case, we're talking about 7.62 millimeters. They also can be referred to in fractions of an inch. So the 5.56 for the typical AR means that its diameter is 5.56 millimeters, which is approximately 0.22 inches. And that would be more the 22 caliber, which is very popular, many different sizes, but it's pretty skinny. But the 7.62 by 39 is the same as a 30 caliber, measured in 0.30 inches. And that would be the same diameter of a 308 round, 30-30, a 30-06. But depending on what specific ammo it is, it may have the same diameter bullet, but it may be longer, heavier, and the casing may be completely different. The 308 is going to be much bigger, have more powder, and have a heavier bullet that will give it a whole lot more power, velocity, and distance for accuracy than you would have with this. But this one, the case for this one's going to be bigger, and the diameter is going to be bigger than the 556. So there's a confusion. Sometimes you'll hear millimeters. Sometimes you'll hear the numbers for the fractions of an inch. And when you write it, you'll put the decimal in, but when you say it, you won't put the decimal. So 556 really means 5.56 millimeters. 762 means 7.62 millimeters. And then the other one would be that this would be a 762 by 39. That will get into the actual length of it. That would be, this has a 39 millimeter, not a fraction, but actually 39 millimeter length on the actual bullet part. So yes, it can be confusing, but right now we're just going to talk about the 762 by 39. It's bigger, more powerful, because both the casing and the projectile, the casing's bigger with more gunpowder. The projectile itself is thicker, longer, and heavier. And it's estimated that the typical 762 by 39 round will have just as much power 100 yards after it left the muzzle as the 556 will have right after it leaves the muzzle. But the 556, on the other hand, is faster, it's lighter, it makes it easier to load more in there and carry it easier. And with that higher, lighter speeds, you can generally get accuracy for further distances. It's easier to shoot longer range. But the 556, being so skinny, it's actually illegal in some states to try to use that for large game such as deer, because it is such a skinny round. And the assumption is it's not going to have the stopping power as the more the more powerful rounds such as this to take down the deer in a humane way. So, and that is one of the big reasons I chose the 762 by 39. More stopping power. If I had to go shooting in some other state that it would be legal to shoot the 556, I'd be okay. If the laws change here in the state where I live, I'm more likely to be able to shoot this as opposed to the 556 round. And also, when I was first reading, this kind of gets into things getting outdated. It was said that the 762 by 39 round was cheaper than the 556. And the reason for that was that the Russians, instead of using the brass for the casing, they would put it in steel. And the steel's cheaper than brass. And so you can get these rounds for a lot cheaper than you could the rounds that the 556 came in. Well, since then, though, the manufacturers of the brass of all the way down to 9 by 308, the 9 millimeter, you can buy just about any round now with the metal case also, which is cheaper. And some will tell you, well, okay, this is going to wear your barrel down faster. And that is true, but there's a lot of studies that's been done, and the fact is that you're going to be spending a whole lot more on these brass rounds than it would take to shoot these until your very durable melanite barrel gets worn out and you have to switch it. Just go ahead and replace it, and that'll be a lot cheaper than shooting a bunch of these. And that is going to be your biggest cost, is the ammo. When we're talking about buying on a budget, you want something on a budget, and that's why I chose the 762 by 39, but that spec's kind of out of date now. You can get the 556 in metal for the same price, and the fact that they're such demand, there's all types of varieties. They're on sale a lot more often. So really, I'd have to say the 556 has the advantage as far as price and selection, as well as the magazines, over the 762 by 39. But the 762 by 39 is a much more powerful round, and that's why I chose it. But to each his own on that. Okay, so the next specification we have is the 5/8 by 24 thread pitch. What that simply means is at the end, at the muzzle end of the barrel here, they'll have some threads in there so where you can put on different muzzle attachments to it. And there's different things you can put on there. You can put in a suppressor to reduce the amount of noise. Those aren't silencers, trust me, those things are still pretty loud, but they save your ears from damage. Or this can be like a flash suppressor or a muzzle brake, and there's a lot of different options you can choose there. This one comes with a mil-spec A2 flash hider. Very typical thing that the military will use, and it's good for suppressing the flash that comes out of it in case you need to keep kind of a low profile. and it does reduce the recoil slightly. But the muzzle brake, on the other hand, will be a lot better for reducing recoil. And the recoil, that's kind of another disadvantage of the 762x39. There's more power going out here, but for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So this thing's going to have a lot more kick than the 556. And being able to put a muzzle brake on here to reduce that recoil can help keep your next shot more aligned. If the barrel shoots up and you have to go back and find your target again, the more that moves, the harder it is to do that and to have a reliable follow-up shot. So muzzle brakes can help, but muzzle brakes are very noisy. If you ever go to the shooting range and somebody's there around shooting a rifle with a muzzle brake, you're going to know quickly. It shoots a big, huge burst of air out, and it makes an extremely loud noise. And if you're maybe in a prone position or something like this and you shoot that, the dust is going to be flying everywhere, even though they do have some that kind of address that issue. But I'm just going to recommend the best thing to start off with is just the A2 flash hider that comes with something like, most of your typical ARs will come with that. But the 5/8x24 thread pitch is going to be typical for the 30 caliber rounds, barrels that shoot 30 caliber ammunition. Whereas the 556, the barrel for that one is going to have a different thread pitch on it, so you'll have to make sure you get the right. If you want to make any adjustments and change what you're going to put on the end of the muzzle, you have to know what that pitch is. So the next specification, we're moving on to the bolt carrier group, or the BCG. And this one says it's the M16 mil-spec HPT MPI BCG. All right, well, again, we've talked about this is the bolt carrier group. This is the bolt, and there's a firing pin in there also, and this will be where the gas tube comes into here, and that's where the gas comes and blows and causes that bolt to move back and forth, and the cycling of your round and all that good stuff. All right, now this is the part that's kind of the powerhouse of the AR-15. If this thing goes bad on you, you're in big trouble, and it's going to take a beating. It's going to take a real beating, so we need this to be as tough as possible. So what they do, the military has these specifications they have for how this is made, and you can read later too. This would be more the A2 type that can be used for full automatic, but that's beyond the scope of this right now. You can get these in lighter configurations, but this is kind of a typical one. And the HPT means it's a high pressure test. The MPI, after they do the high pressure, they do a magnetic particle inspection of it. And these are tests that are done to make sure that these are going to meet the highest standards required to be able to live up to the task that's required for them. And this doesn't mean that every single one of these goes through this inspection. They'll do some statistical analysis and choose certain ones from a lot and do the test on it and make sure that there's a very low probability of having any types of problems with these. And you want any type of AR that you buy, that it does have the HPT MPI inspection done to it. Okay, so this one does have that. And again, I think the bolt carrier group here is made out of the same melanite 4150 chromoly steel alloy. All right, the next thing is this is an RF low profile microgas block. So let's get in how the cycling of rounds, which makes this a semi-automatic, happens. We don't have to manually pull it back and forth. It does it for us automatically. And how's that done? Well, this will be a distinction between the AK-47, which typically uses the piston, whereas ARs typically use direct gas impingement. Well, what does that mean? Okay, so as the firing pin hits this, an explosion happens, and out comes a whole lot of gas, very high pressure, just shoots a projectile down the end. And what happens is some of this gas, there's going to be a little hole in your barrel here, and some of that's going to get channeled through a little tube into your bolt carrier group, actually right into this part right here. And that will be just, if it's done just right, it's going to cycle the bolt and the round and everything else just the way you want. And what it ends up doing, this ends up getting pushed back onto your buffer here. And there's a big strong spring in here in your receiver tube or your buffer tube. and all of that's set up right. If you get it set just right, it'll cycle the round perfectly. If it doesn't, if it's overgassed or undergassed or your buffer's not right, that can cause some problems with the cycling. So you're going to have to kind of work those issues out if you have a problem. Fortunately, that has not been a problem. You typically want something shooting your rounds to come out about at 3 o'clock or maybe slightly this way or the other way, but if it's too much pressure, it's going to not cycle properly. Not enough pressure, the same thing. So that's how this works. The direct impingement means that this gas just goes directly, that explosion gas goes directly back into my chamber here and blows with my barrel and everything else, blows into there. And it's a lot of carbon and sooty black stuff going on. And this is looked at as a negative sometimes with the AR-15, saying that it vomits on itself. It takes all this nasty stuff and puts it right back to where it needs to eat, so to say. But the reality is, okay, yeah, it gets a little black and dirty, but that doesn't really slow you down any. As long as you keep this well lubricated, that stuff's not going to hurt you at all. But there's some purists that say, well, I want to get a piston where those gases will be used to push the piston. The piston then will be used to cycle the rounds. Much different than this. So that would be the AK-47. The Russians came up with that design. In the US, we came up with a direct impingement. And you can get AR-15s with piston. It's going to cost more, and really, I don't think you're going to be buying them. You have more parts to break down. Again, people are going to have different opinions on that, but I don't see that there's any need to buy that. Keeping the good budget model, we want the direct gas impingement. Now, getting to this actual specification, it says it's an RF low-profile micro gas block. Well, when the AR-15 was first designed, the handguard was pretty big and wide, and so that you had a lot of room and space to be able to put that gas tube to come back into there. Nowadays, we want kind of the sleek, low-profile, slimmer handguards here, like this one, and for that, you're going to need a micro tube. The tube here is what, the gas block rather, is what connects onto the barrel, keeps a nice, good, tight seal to keep that gas from going in only the spots where you want it, and that stainless steel tube will come into here and connect to here, and you're going to need to have these nice low profile skinny hand guards. You're going to want to have the micro gas block, and that's what we have here, the low profile micro gas block. The next one is a stainless carbide length gas system. Okay, so the tube that's going to be carrying that gas is stainless steel, and carbide length means the position where that hole is going to be on your barrel. And we did state this is a carbide length barrel, so it makes sense we have a carbide length gas system. But you can also, the types would be a rifle length, a mid length, a carbine length, and a pistol length. And the carbine length seems to work just fine. I'm not having any problems with this, but I have read that the mid length is actually a little bit more going to cause less problems and less wear and tear on your gun, and it might be a better choice. So if it's between a carbine length and a mid length and they're the same price, go with the mid length. On the other hand, I don't have any problems. I haven't had any problems with this carbine. As long as everything's set just right, you're not going to have any problem. And then the next spec is that's mil-spec A2 flash hider. That's what we talked about before here. And these can be taken off. You got to be a little bit careful once you take them off. A part gets damaged and you have to get a new part and every time you take it on and off. But you can replace these with different types of muzzle devices here. And muzzle brake and super cool fancy muzzle brakes can be something you can add on later on. For a general purpose, what we're looking at right here, this is fine. Now next we get into the handguard, and that is kind of important. There's a lot that can go on. This is kind of a big distinction between the AK and the AR. The AR was going to have this nice Picatinny rail, and in the more modern ones, your handguard is also going to have what we call an M-lock or a key mod system that you can easily attach accessories to. Generally speaking, when you buy your AR, it's not going to have any type of sight system on it, or if it does, it'll simply be an iron sight system. It'll just have this rail up here and possibly rails at different locations. I had to add this rail onto this rail onto this. And this one, the flashlight is able to put in directly into the M-lock slots. So M-lock means that it makes it very easy. Instead of having to have a rail to attach your accessories on, you can actually attach them directly to the handguard itself. And it's a nice, cool system where you can, I had actually tried to mount something on here that's just a regular nut and bolt and try to get in there, hold it in position. It took forever. Whereas the M-lock as well as the key mods make it real easy to be able to just hook something into here, as this right here, as you see, there's no rail here. It goes right into the actual handguard here. And also the handguard, you need to know too, helps protect your hand from the heat. That barrel is going to be heating up. So the handguard, you want it to be light, protect your hand from the heat, as well as being able to attach your accessories to. And this one shines really well. And a lot of times they're going to say you buy your AR and then upgrade the handguard on it. Well, this one comes up with the upgraded one on it with this M-lock system. With this particular rifle, though, where it attaches to the actual upper here, there's a bunch of machine screws here, and they did come out after shooting several rounds. So you have to just make sure you get some blue Loctite, which I'll discuss in further videos, and make sure you tighten these down with that Loctite on there to keep those from coming out. Once you put the Loctite on it, no problems. Now it says it's free floated. That's going to be important. Free floated means that nothing touches the barrel. This thing's going right here and the barrel's going inside of it, and they don't touch each other. The barrel screws into the connection on the lower receiver, on the upper receiver, and this screws in to the upper also. It does not touch the barrel. And that's going to be important because you're going to want this to be, if it's free floated, it's going to be less disturbed by the harmonics and a lot of other different things. It's just a much more accurate system when it's free floated. So whether that makes any difference on something you're shooting 100, 200 yards at the most, may not, but free float is much better than not free float. This is a free float, so that's good. This one's also 15 inches. So if you see the barrel itself is 16 inches, there's only an inch difference between this and that. A lot of times the ARs will stop about right here. But if you notice, all the goodies I want, I'm putting on the end. And so having that longer handguard with be able to put attachments onto it, to me is a plus. The disadvantage though, the shorter the handguard, the lighter it is. When this thing first came, I was really impressed how light it was compared to my other hunting rifle. But then after you put these attachments on it, you put the 30 mag round in there, the 154 grain bullets in there, this thing gets heavy really quick. And if you're going to be going long distances in tough terrains, you're going to want this as light as possible, so every inch counts. And I do see though that at Classic Firearms they're offering another one of the Radical firearms with a new type of handguard that still has the M-lock, but this one you do see that there's a lot of holes in there to make it light as possible, but they even made it lighter. And it's something that I believe Radical Firearms, it's their design, and it gets it even lighter. I kind of like this one with all these different options to be able to put things on. The other ones will just have the 9 o'clock will be, this is also called the Picatinny rail. I didn't go over that. The Picatinny rail here is on top of the receiver and also on top of my handguard here. And that's the railing system that most attachments are made to go on. So you'll see the word Weaver or Picatinny, and either Weaver attachments or Picatinny will go on these just fine. So getting this nice Picatinny rail here is what you're looking for. Again, now, do I use this little part in the middle? No, I use the end, and I use here for my scope, maybe up to right here. So this is a little bit of extra dead weight, but I do like the option of having all this railing if I need it. And let's go over the mag pull M-lock attachments. The holes in this are designed to be able to do the M-lock. And there's two kind of types out there, the key mod and the M-lock. And your attachments have to be either one or the other. Or generally that's the way it comes. But Magpul, which is a big manufacturer for a lot of goodies for AR-15s, came up with the M-lock system as opposed to the key mod, and they made it free for other people to use, like Radical Firearms. And it kind of seems like that's going to be the standard. I think the military has moved towards that also. So I'm thinking for the future, M-LOK is going to be a better option. And that just has to get to do with the spacings to be able to put the M-LOK attachments in there. And I really like that. Now we get into the actual upper itself and the composition and making of it. Again, the upper is, we're talking about this casing right here, and it's made out of aluminum, and it's forged aluminum. So they can also be made out of, especially the lower, can be made out of different strong polymers, or even a carbon filament. I think they have one that's called that. And they can actually be very tough and cheaper, and maybe be a good option. But the tried and true is the aluminum. And the three types of making the aluminum and forming it into the shape you want would be, typically, is the cast, the billet, and forged. The billet would be, you have the cast is you would pour aluminum into a mold, and that mold pretty much has the shape, and then you take it from there and fine tune it, and you got your product. The billet would be, get a block of aluminum, and you drill it, and with the machinery get it the exact shape you want. And it kind of has some negative connotation to being kind of low quality. But nowadays, again, you got to be careful. What you may hear one from oldies saying something, it may not be true anymore. And they have some really cool designs with that more of a 3D ability with billeting and the tooling to make it look pretty cool. So the billeting can be pretty good also. The forged, though, is where they, with compression and hammering and a bunch of other stuff, they get it in the shape you want. And for one reason or another, that one seems to be the most durable. So the forged aluminum is kind of the tried and true what the military uses, I think, for the most part. That's what you want to go for. Again, you might want to learn more about it, look into the carbon filament, and if you want to get a cool billet, that's fine too. You'll just have to look into that stuff. But I will say that the aluminum for both your upper and your lower, the aluminum forged, that's a good bet. All right, now the last things here, we have the forward assist, the shell deflector, and the dust cover. And these, how much you actually really need these, back in the day when they first designed this, probably a whole lot, and that's why they did it, but not so much. If your system's not over gassed, you won't need the shell deflector. But what the shell deflector does, it is kind of nice. If a shell does come out and it's not shooting at the right angle, and it's coming back at an angle like this, instead of shooting at you, the shell deflector will simply deflect it and nothing will go back in this direction. The forward assist, this has actually been more problems for me than it's been help. And if you look at the bolt carrier group, there's some little slots on here, and this grips into that. If this were to be in a position where it's not quite fully in full battery, I think is the word used for it, fully in the position where it needs to be, you can just kind of inch it up with this. What happened to me though, you never really use this thing, and the pawl, there's a part in here called a pawl, rather, P-A-W-L, and it fell out and actually jammed my bolt carrier group, and I had to take it all apart. Fortunately, I had the right tool to take this off and get it out, and that did, though, result in me finally having to bring it to Radical Firearms. And when I went in, they updated my whole entire bolt carrier group. They fixed this problem, and they said they've made some upgrades to the quality, and they made sure that mine had all the latest and greatest quality parts. So I was very impressed with that. And the last is the dust cover here, and right now it's closed. If you're going long distances and walking around in dusty scenarios and stuff like this, you can shut the dust cover here, prevent dust from coming into there. But every time you shoot it, it's going to open up, and it generally stays open most of the time. But it is nice to have that feature, I guess. Is it essential? I don't know how essential it is, but okay, great. You're able to protect it from dust if you need it. So those typically come, all three of these generally come with most AR-15 uppers. Okay, so I think that pretty much finishes it for the upper. So now let's go to the lower. Okay, so let me go ahead and take this apart. And these things are pretty handy. For the most part, sometimes they get a little finicky, but just with your hands, you're able to take out these pins right here. They don't come out completely, but they come in enough. And if you just take out this one, you can rotate this on the hinge here. If you take out both of them, you can separate the upper and the lower. And again, the great thing about the AR-15 platform, you can get other uppers for a much lower price than a whole unit and continue to use the same lower that you got with all your attachments on it, and get this with for like another $250, I can get the 556 upper with the entire setup that I have here. Or I can get a Valkyrie, a 224 Valkyrie, which is good for long distances. There's a 300 Blackout, which I don't recommend. It shoots also a 30 caliber, but it has the advantage it fits into the 556 magazine. But as a starter, that's not something you're really going to be looking at. I think that was a fad that's dying out. This is a much better way to go if you want the bigger, more powerful rounds. But you can just get another upper, put it on this lower, and you got a whole new gun, so to say. Now you can't use the two at the same time, but you're able to shoot the different rounds from it. Okay, so again, the lower receiver is just this part right here. The receiver tube or the buffer tube here, all this stuff isn't technically the receiver itself, nor this pistol grip or the trigger. So let's talk about what this is. Again, this is going to be a forged lower. So it's got I don't think they actually do the forging there at Radical Firearms, but it does have a nice little, their little logo here. So it's there. They get the manufacturer to put their name on it. And it's a mil-spec lower parts kit. So by the parts kit, they mean there's the safety, there's the hammer here. The hammer's what, when you pull the trigger, the spring, you got the spring, the hammer spring in here. It'll push this forward, hits the striking pin in your bolt carrier group, which hits the primer, ignites the round, and goes bang. So everything in here is mil-spec, which means it meets the military minimum standards that they demand for any type of military rifle. By a mil-spec trigger also means it's going to be a little bit of a heavy trigger, but it's going to be good enough. Do you really want a hair trigger on something that you're going to be using for this Swiss Army knife thing? I say no. I want something I don't want to accidentally go off. Again, you have your safety, but when I have the safety off, I put my finger on the trigger, in a position to be ready to shoot something. I don't want this thing to accidentally go off. Again, using proper safety, you can prevent those problems and still use your hair trigger. But I liked a little bit of a heavier trigger. And by heavy trigger means how much it takes, how much foot-pounds it takes to actually release the hammer. And you can spend a whole lot of money, and on your purists are going to want a really light trigger that's really smooth. But the mil-spec trigger for me is good enough. And if I wanted to consider a later upgrade to do more accurate shooting at longer distance, I might consider a better trigger, but this one works. And all the springs and everything in here are saying that it's just the mil-spec parts. Nothing fancy, but plenty good enough. It gets the job done. There is this little yellow thing I have in here. Will be when I talk about add-ons, I'll talk about that. This just helps it keep the upper and the lower tight. This one came when I bought it, was super tight. After a couple thousand rounds, it got a little bit loose where as these two fit together, there's a little bit of shaking. How much that affects your accuracy, I don't know. But this is a common thing that people have recommended to put in there. But mine was still so tight that I had to cut that to really thin to get it in there. But that just helps keep the upper and lower from being, loose, making it really tight. And, it has the typical buffer and buffer spring in here. I won't take this, well, actually I'll show it real quick. Again, most of this stuff you can do, you don't need any special tools to be able to open this stuff up. These were made for soldiers in the field to be able to take this part and do maintenance and swap out parts, and just with a little oil pretty much keep this thing going as long as they need it. This would be the buffer. It's got some weight on it. You can also fine-tune this to maybe reduce the recoil a little bit. But what comes with it has worked fine for me. The spring works just fine. And the buffer tube here, that's part that comes with it. Then the next spec is an overmolded grip. Okay, so this is the pistol grip right here, and I really like this one. It's overmolded is just a way of putting different things together to be kind of best of two different compounds together. This one is very hard and it's very rough right here to help with the grip, make it not slippery. And I like the angle. You can get these at different angles. I like the angle where it is. It is very much like a pistol when you're shooting this, and that works just great for me. So typically though, you're not going to get this type of quality in your pistol grip, and that'll be a recommended upgrade. Again, just like they're going to recommend an upgrade for this. You buy an AR and then upgrade the handguard. You're not going to need this. It comes with a nice handguard, the railing and everything else. You're not going to need to upgrade your pistol grip. It comes with a very nice one. Maybe you will consider a better trigger one day, but you're not going to need that at first. All right, and that leads us to the next thing, is the MFT collapsible stock. MFT is the manufacturer of this. This is called their minimalist stock. This is not a typical one that you'll see on just low grade, low price budget ARs. This is an upgrade, a nice upgrade that they would probably recommend that you do, but it comes with it. Again, I'm buying this budget thing where I'm not having to throw away parts and put new parts on. So this comes with the upgrades I probably want to get if I got a budget AR, but it comes with it and still in a nice price range that I like. All right, and it comes with, this, I really like this minimalist. By minimalist means they keep it as light as possible, as small as possible. Other ones will have a lot of different clutter up in here. But it has the slots just at the right spot. I can take my sling rail here. It actually has a quick disconnect QD connect here, which allows you to be able to easily put your sling on or off. I can put this in. I can either make this a one-point sling, a one-point mount for my sling right here, or I can take it and put, in two different spots up here, a two-point sling. I can, if I don't want to put it here, I can actually take this off and not use the quick disconnect, but actually put my strap in right here. And I actually kind of like it right here better. I'm debating whether I should leave it here with the quick disconnect or just kind of put in there semi-permanently, strapping this right into this loop right here, which works really nice. So I've done that and tried it out. I kind of like it. I'm deciding which one to get. And also this is a collapsible stock. By collapsible, with the AK-47, it's kind of an advantage about it, since it has a piston, it doesn't require this big buffer area in here, the receiver tube or the buffer tube. So this one has to be here. You can't just fold it over and collapse it, whereas the AK-47s, you can do that. But by collapsible here, that means that this can be adjusted in different positions. I simply squeeze on this, and I can move it, I think, to like 6 positions. In all reality, though, I either keep it all the way up for close quarter scenarios, or I'll put it all the way out for long distance shooting. Okay, and so those would be the only positions I use it for. But for maybe if you're a little bit smaller or something like that, you might want one of these middle points for you. But it has the ability to do all of them. This is really hard. I've seen videos where they do torture tests on this. This looks like maybe this could break easily. No, they put sledgehammers to it and everything. And this is very durable, a nice quality stock butt on this. So the last thing they bring up is it comes with one 20-round magazine. You're going to want a magazine with, if it doesn't come with it, these things, cost, if it's an AR-15 and you want just if you're getting the 5.56 round, or if it's an AK-47 and those magazines, you get those really cheap. These, from 15 to 20 bucks. And again, you're going to want one with 20 round in case you're going to be doing prone position or from a bench. You're going to want the smaller mag, and the bigger mag for typical carry, where you're going to want to have a lot of rounds available right on at hand. Two is the charger handle. This might be something you want to upgrade. This is, again, they say charger handle, and you're thinking, wow, what is that thing? It's a super powerhouse charger? No, it's simply a very thin piece of aluminum that goes in. It allows you to manually, kind of what you might call cock the position. If you have to manually load around or manually eject around, that's what you will use. You use your charger handle for that. So, and that was the other thing that broke on me. I had the charger handle broke, and they sent me a new one right away. And but it did, if your charger handle goes out in the field, you can be out of luck. There are times where you're definitely going to need to manually charge the round, manually load the round, and you're up the creek. You can't, without that charger handle.